Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer neuen Aufnahme von Disco Elysium. Ich habe einen neuen Rechner und ja, deshalb ist jetzt alles ein bisschen, mussten wir alles ein bisschen umstellen und sowas, aber das wird vieles vereinfachen, ähm, weil der Rechner jetzt nur exklusiv für mich zum Spielen, Aufnehmen, was auch immer ist. Ich werde damit tatsächlich dann auch mal vielleicht streamen können in Zukunft, wenn es zeitlich passt. Und auf jeden Fall auch, ja, es ist fürs Spielen viel geiler einfach. Ja, das nur am Rande. Wir legen los.
Good. You're up. Listen, there's something that's been bothering you for a few days now.
Moment, ich muss mal kurz gucken, ob die Aufnahme läuft. Ja, läuft, alles klar. Das ist das Einzige, was ich auf jeden Fall demnächst noch verbessern will, mir einen zweiten Monitor aufzustellen, damit ich dann nicht immer aus dem Spiel raustappen muss, sondern ja, mir das Programm quasi auf den zweiten Monitor legen kann. Ähm, Was für eine Sache denn?
It's a suspicion, or a feeling really, that things are not quite in hand around here. Every day, things seem to spin more and more wildly, out of control. The center isn't holding. And despite your efforts to moderate and contain these energies, things only seem to be getting worse.
Moment mal, ich dachte eigentlich, dass alles ganz gut läuft.
Oh, sure. You've been making progress on your case, interviewing people, solving side tasks. But who's focusing on the big questions?
Was soll ich denn machen?
You've got to find out who bears la responsabilité.
Was genau ist denn La Responsabilité?
The most awesome, terrible thing. It is human nature to crave la responsabilité and to deny it. That's why it must be distributed across many different organizations, agencies, offices, and portfolios.
Ich dachte, ich würde bereits Verantwortung zuweisen für den Mord.
Harry, you're thinking about this too narrowly. La responsabilité isn't concerned with trivial questions like who killed who. It's about the real issues, the human welfare index, the price of staple goods, the transition to real democracy.
Alles klar, immer her damit. Ich werde die Verantwortung übernehmen.
Whoa. This isn't some kind of dictatorship. You can't simply seize la responsabilité for yourself. It must be given by a legitimate authority,
Was willst du von mir?
like a committee.
Haben wir für all das auch wirklich Zeit?
There is always time to follow best practices. Once someone's decided to cut corners for the sake of expediency, who knows what else they're capable of? Swift, decisive action. Mass executions. Fun stuff. That's what they're capable of.
Und wer sollte diesem Komitee angehören?
Only the most even-keeled minds in Martinez. Your half-brother, the lieutenant, is a natural place to start. Together, you'll be able to discover who has la responsabilité in Rivershaw. And, if necessary, you'll have the wisdom and expertise to assign it among yourselves.
Und was passiert, nachdem wir die Verantwortung zugewiesen haben?
Most likely, your findings will be collected in a report, which will be carefully reviewed by your superiors. Once they've reviewed it, those same superiors will produce a set of recommendations to be taken up at the next meeting of the Standing Committee. Rest assured, no matter what happens, it will be done through the proper channels.
Ich habe keine Ahnung, worum es geht, aber ich bin bereit, diese fantastische Last auf mich zu nehmen.
Good luck. Your report is eagerly anticipated.
Alles klar. Was bedeutet das? Ja, ein moralistisches Komitee. Aha. Na gut. Ich weiß nicht, haben wir eine Probe hier, die wir nochmal einfach versuchen könnten, wo wir gerade da sind? Aber ich kann jetzt sogar runterscrollen, das ist ja fantastisch. Da. Spiegel. Ja gut, wir können nochmal an den Spiegel gehen.
A mirror hangs on the bathroom wall. It's barely covered in steam anymore. You see yourself, the expression, fixed to your clean-shaven face. You're still not accustomed to it.
Ist immer noch ziemlich gering, die Chance. Aber wir versuchen es einfach nochmal.
Like the rest of you,
Nein.
it comes from a bad place, somewhere in the past. That's all you know for now.
Na gut. Schön die Tür zu machen hier. Ja. Da ist ja der Kim. Guten Morgen, Kim.
Yes?
Ja, ich dachte vielleicht, wir sollten ihn über alles aufklären, was wir herausgefunden haben, aber reden lieber über mein rasiertes Gesicht. Schauen Sie mal, ich habe mich rasiert.
Yes. I don't know what to say. Perhaps,
Ich wusste, ich hätte mich nicht rasieren sollen. Ich wusste es und habe es trotzdem getan. Ich bin ein Idiot.
No, it's okay, I guess. I may have preferred the mutton chops. They sort of seem to cover the...
Ja.
Damage.
Either way, good on you. You were saying?
Ja, ich fand es, glaube ich, vorher auch besser. Kim, wir müssen uns über Verantwortung unterhalten.
I'm glad to hear it, Detective. I was wondering when we'd get to this very subject.
Gut, dann sind wir auf derselben Wellenlänge.
If you ask me, it's past time for you to cut back on the smoking. You seem like a man with a death wish. It's quite disturbing.
Ich habe nur eine Zigarette geraucht bisher, genau wie du, nebenbei bemerkt. Lassen Sie mir wenigstens meine Zigaretten, Kim. Ich rauche sie nur für die Boni.
The lieutenant's quizzical expression gradually deepens into a frown.
Oh oh.
So, what are we talking about then?
Ich rede von la responsabilité. Sie wissen schon, derjenigen, die zugewiesen wird.
Why are you pronouncing it like that gentleman from the Institute of Price Stabilité?
Mit dem du gar nicht geredet hast.
You know what? Forget it. What specifically are you trying to assign responsibility for?
Für diese ganze Situation.
Now I understand. Next, I suppose you're going to tell me you need to form a committee to assign this responsibility?
Ja, ganz genau.
Fascinating. And here I believed your recent turn toward moralism was just an act. In any event, I am just a humble law official. I may work under the moral intern's umbrella, but I'm certainly not qualified to serve on any committee. You know who might be, though? That Mr. Villedroit, the gentleman you met in the young man's apartment.
Oh. Aber ob der noch da ist?
If I were trying to get in touch with the coalition, I would start by seeking him out. But first you might need to speak with his young companion. Now, Was there anything else?
Nee, eigentlich nicht. Scheinbar weißt du ja dann schon Bescheid. Wer ist er denn? Ist das der junge Raucher? Könnte sein. Lena, ich habe deinen Mann gefunden.
Oh, hello, dear. There you are again.
Ich bin ihrem Mann an der Küste begegnet.
Goodness. How is he? Did he say why he hasn't returned yet?
Die alte Frau schlägt über ihrer Decke die Hände zusammen. Es geht ihm gut. Wie ich mir schon gedacht hatte, konnte er nicht eher zurückkommen, weil die Kanalschleuse kaputt war. Jetzt muss er nur noch seine Arbeit beenden.
Oh, yes. That's my Morel. He's bound to catch a cold staying out there for so long. But I am so relieved to hear that he's okay. Thank you for putting an old woman's heart at ease, if
Yeah.
even a little.
Gerne doch.
You haven't, however. There are dangers out there. Our aging body's foul. Her heart won't rest until Morel is safely back with her.
Sie haben mir gar nicht erzählt, dass Sie die Fasmine gesehen haben.
Oh, you don't want to hear about some old woman's ramblings.
Doch, ich will es wirklich wissen.
Reflexively, the lieutenant read his familiar notebook.
Well, it was summer. I was building a racing track out of sand on the beach near a tall stand of reeds. Quite a tall one. Many times my height, I remember. When, all of a sudden...
Moment, wo war das und wie alt waren Sie?
I'm getting ahead of myself. I was 5.5 in Betancourt in the suburbs. My grandmother had a summer home there.
She'd just started forming memories. Real memories. Not the billowy haze of infanthood.
Was ist dann passiert?
The strangest moment of my life. I looked up and one of the reeds moved. Not like a plant, but like a living thing. It stood up and looked at me. Its body unfolded like some antique toy. I've never seen anything like it.
She had no fear. Just surprise.
I didn't know this can happen, so I reached my arm and touched the thing. It felt just like a stalk of reed, but it moved, swaying, towering above me. After a while, 20 seconds, a minute maybe, it left, went into the reeds.
Sind Sie ihr gefolgt?
I tried, but I was only a child. There was mud and high water. I couldn't see it anymore. I was just standing there knee-deep in mud, looking around me.
Where did you go? Don't go.
Und dann?
I ran back home to my grandmother and asked her if reeds could walk, and told her they were looking at me. Of course, she just laughed at me, but I knew what I'd seen. For years, it was a story I told at parties when I wanted to impress boys. That sort of thing. Of course, most people just took it as a strange, amusing anecdote. So did I, honestly. But then I met Morel. We were on our first date when I told him my story. You should have seen his face. He said my descriptions matched the phasmid down to a T. Its white marble limbs, the way it moved.
So that's how they met. This is beyond significant for them.
Sie hatten eine Verabredung.
Our first, yes.
Ihre Gliedmaßen sind weiß?
Not all of them, as far as I remember. But some of them, on the inside like stalks of marble, if that makes sense.
Wie groß war sie?
It's hard to say how big things are when you're quite small yourself. To me, it seemed to be taller than I was then, but that's probably not the case.
Vielleicht haben Sie sie sich eingebildet, Lena.
Of course. I've thought about it. But Morel says my report matches with the others. And I'm sure I hadn't heard of the phasmid as a child. Nor had my mother or my grandmother. So how did I know what to imagine? It was only when I started telling my story as a teenager that boys would tell me, Lena.
Sie senkt die Stimme und imitiert einen Jungen.
You trying to tell us you saw the Insulindian phasmid out there in those reeds? Get out of here. They just give me a cider and ruffle my hair and tell me to stop dreaming. But I saw it.
Kim, was sagen Sie dazu?
I thought it was a wonderful story, ma'am.
Er schließt sein Notizbuch und schenkt ihr ein Lächeln.
But I don't believe it. A child left unattended on a warm day. Children make up stories and then end up believing them.
Ich glaub ihr. Danke, dass Sie mir die Geschichte erzählt haben.
You're welcome, sweetie. I do appreciate the chance to relive it whenever I get one. It was just such an impossibly sunshiny day. So warm.
And she could get up and walk right into the reeds on her own, into the mud, anywhere.
Jetzt können wir es nochmal versuchen. Wir können sie versuchen zu überreden, etwas über coole Kryptiden zu erzählen.
There's really no point in manipulating anyone. She'd be only too pleased to tell you about her work. Go on and ask.
Wissen Sie was, Lena? Ich würde gerne etwas über diese Kryptiden erfahren, mit denen Sie sich beschäftigt haben. Können Sie mir über ein paar davon etwas erzählen?
Oh, I'd be delighted. Truth be told, I could really use the company too.
Ja, wir haben Zeit dafür.
One cryptid, not a couple.
Oh.
One. This won't turn into some kind of cryptid extravaganza.
Okay, Kim, nur ein kleiner Kryptid, versprochen.
He nods and assumes a waiting posture. Cryptids, cryptids. Let's hear about all the interesting cryptids.
Aber wenn ich doch das alles fragen könnte, dass es Unsichtbare gibt. Welcher Kryptid ist der gefährlichste?
The gnome of Jeroma.
Sie macht eine dramatische Pause. Der Gnom von Geroma? So schlimm klingt das gar nicht.
Oh, it is. None of his victims survived. Grieving relatives never even found their bodies because the gnome's venom dissolved organic tissue.
Wie sah dieser Kryptid aus?
It was reportedly a small creature with webbed fingers and a protruding forehead and a gangly little thing. Quite scary to look at. A couple of campers found it when it was already dying. They heard an odd wailing in the woods and followed the sound. They were scared and wrapped it in tarpaulin to suffocate it. It still took the gnome of Jeroma an entire day to die.
If the body of the creature was found, why aren't there detailed illustrations of it in science textbooks, confirming the existence of this very little species?
Alas, the first scientist who got his hands on the creature's corpse put it in a jar of formaldehyde, thinking that would detoxify the gnome's venom. Instead, all the venom leaked out of the creature's teeth and into the surrounding liquid, dissolving the creature itself. A poetic end, perhaps, but a real loss for science.
Ihre Worte scheinen hauptsächlich für Sie selbstbestimmt zu sein. Kim, ich möchte auch noch die anderen Sachen fragen, okay? Welcher Kryptid ist der größte?
Hey, you promised you'd only ask about one cryptid.
Aber Kim, haben Sie etwa kein Interesse an einem weiteren Kryptiden?
The lieutenant pauses thoughtfully. Something in him breaks.
Ah, fuck it. Let's have more cryptids.
Well, the biggest cryptid is, of course, the horrible giant of Kokonur. The giant lives in the most arid parts of the vast Kokonur Desert in South Samara, casting a strange light across the barren wastes.
Moment, was meinen Sie mit seltsamem Licht?
Mirage or psychogenous luminance.
Sie geht nicht weiter darauf ein, was es mit dieser Luminanz auf sich hat. Und wie groß ist er nun?
No one knows for sure. It is like an awful mountain appearing from below the horizon and expanding to cover almost a third of your field of vision.
Ist er gefährlich?
The towering luminosity of Kokonur is a bad omen in local folklore. Some say it's a fata morgana, others, fate unimaginable.
Hooey. No animal can be that large. It's a mirage.
That's what makes it so peculiar. A species surviving at the very limits of scientific law. The giant of Kokonur must be the largest animal the planet can support. There are limits, you see, to how large a metabolism an ecosystem can beget. Some say a gravity anomaly below the Kokonur desert might allow the creature to grow to these gargantuan sizes.
Great. This is great shit. You need more.
Welcher Kryptid ist der winzigste?
Cryobacter catlensis.
Die Antwort kam wie aus der Pistole geschossen. Kryobacter catlensis?
Yes, a unicellular bacterium that was discovered in one of the northernmost points of Kotla on the Boreal Plateau by renowned geologist Caitlin Mijanou some 70 years ago.
Was ist so besonders daran?
The bacterial colony Mijanou found had remained alive while frozen in ice for longer than anyone could reliably estimate. Certainly from before recorded history. Mijanou disappeared shortly after injecting herself with the bacteria she had brought back to study, no doubt in hopes of prolonging her own life.
Moment, hat sie sich injiziert?
Yes, the bacteria had survived in the ice since times immemorial. It is not hard to see where she could have gotten the idea.
It's actually a little hard to see.
Ja, finde ich auch.
But do go on.
Wollen Sie damit sagen, dass irgendwo in der Welt eine unsterbliche Geologin herumläuft?
Yes, and she's quite mad, too. After she treated herself with the bacteria, she stopped aging, but also became increasingly eccentric and irascible so that even her oldest friends were forced to pull away. We can assume that she has been living somewhere in the wilderness for decades now, all alone except for the Cryobacter catlensis coursing through her bloodstream.
Okay. Gibt es auch unsichtbare Kryptiden?
What an interesting question. And the answer is yes, there are.
Of course. All fairy tales have someone or something invisible in them.
Psst, Kim, sie will mir von dem unsichtbaren Kryptiden erzählen. Was ist das für einer?
It's the Coal de Mama Dakwa.
Ah,
Its name means thin whisper of sound, and that's precisely what it is. Self-replicating sound waves, invisible and intangible. The Coal de Mama is very afraid of us, which makes it incredibly difficult to track.
wie klingt er denn?
Like nothing, it's such a high-pitched sound that us humans can't hear it, nor can other animals. It could be ringing right outside your window and you wouldn't even know it. Could be anywhere.
Aber
Everywhere, even.
aber woher weiß man dann, dass es das überhaupt gibt?
Fine, I'll bite. How can an animal be a sound?
Many scientists have asked the same question. Some have claimed that it isn't itself a sound, but a tiny corpuscle that emits sound waves. But there's no evidence to support this theory.
Könnte er hier sein? In diesem Augenblick?
It could be. As I said, it could be everywhere. And we wouldn't know any better. It could be ringing all the days of our lives and nights.
Maybe it's predatory.
Was, wenn es sich um ein Raubtier handelt?
It's not. Don't worry. If it were predatory, we would have found it by the damage it inflicts.
I wouldn't be so sure. What if the damage is also invisible?
Was für Belege gibt es, dass dieses Tier ein Ton ist?
Plenty. It's the evidence that led to its discovery. In the 1920s, a group of Areopagite ornithologists, that is, scientists who study birds, were trying out a new recording technology for capturing sounds outside the range of human hearing. When playing back recordings they had made in the foothills of the Ea mountain range, they noticed certain anomalies, patterns that seemed random at first, but on closer examination were consistent with the waveforms of songbirds.
Vogelgesang.
The scientists soon discovered they could track and even predict what appeared to be feeding, mating, and migration patterns based on sound waves in a strictly delimited range of ultrasonic frequencies, even higher than those of the highest-pitched bat calls.
She transforms, when speaking about these strange animals, into a confident woman.
They realized that they had discovered a new species and called it the Coule de Mamadaqua, after the Paracanassian name for the voice of God, which is said to be very silent.
Reden Sie weiter.
They grew quite obsessed with these little birds. Even though they couldn't see them, they could distinguish among individual birds and even began to name some of them.
Wie hießen sie?
Sequester, Time, Joscan. Those are but some of the Mamadaqua they followed individually.
Warum hat der Mamadaqua solche Angst vor uns?
That is a sad story. A group of university students assisting with the field work in their enthusiasm for the project, and no doubt because they were preoccupied with impressing their professors, nearly drove it to extinction.
Sein Aussterben?
They tried to communicate with it and had no other means but sound. So they started sending out sound waves at frequencies they thought might match the Mamadaqwas. And what happens when a sound wave meets another sound wave of the same frequency, dear?
This lady really should be a teacher. She's really good at the explaining things thing.
Sie heben sich gegenseitig auf.
Exactly. And these tests were performed so recklessly that when they happened upon the right frequency, well, they wiped out most of the population.
Great regret washes over her. A wending cloth.
After that, the corpuscle appears to have migrated elsewhere. There have been recordings of anomalies similar to those spotted in Ea, but they've been few and far between. It's impossible to confirm the presence of any stable Coule de Mamadaqua population anywhere.
Of course, a common thread in these. Disappearance and unfalsifiability. I like the story, though, ma'am.
I'm glad you did, dear.
Es scheint sie wirklich zu freuen. Interessant. Was ist mit...
What about what?
Ja, nichts mehr. Das war wirklich sehr informativ. Leider müssen wir jetzt über etwas anderes reden.
Of course, dear.
Aber mehr können wir doch nicht erfragen, oder?
You know, to hell with it.
Of course, officers.
Ciao.
Of course, dear.
Das wäre vorerst alles.